So let me explain. When I asked our director earlier today for last Sunday's numbers of views in whole or in part, he told me it's 760,000. A little bit down, he said, because of the World Cup. And I'm sure that that will be true again this evening. And that's why I'm going to keep you up to date with the Germany-Spain result throughout the show. But then somebody sent me a pirate clip of mine from last Sunday's mother of all talk shows on the Chinese-owned platform TikTok. At first we couldn't see how many views it had, but we did see that it had 55,000 likes. Curious and curious, we dug deeper and discovered that that pirate clip, not posted by me or us, has 1.2 million views of a part of last Sunday's show. Now, why do I tell you that? First of all, because I'm pretty chuffed at that number, but more importantly, and I'm saying this to any Chinese friends that are watching, you know that if I had posted that clip, it would either have been taken down by TikTok or so violently suppressed algorithmically that it would have been lucky to get 300 views. But when someone else puts up a lesser quality version, pirate version, on your platform, it gets 1.2 million views. Sort it out, China. Sort it out, TikTok. You're making a fool of yourselves rather than me, because people will find a way to watch my output, as that pirate clip shows. I'm mentioning it not particularly to single out TikTok, though for obvious reasons. I'm pretty bitter about being suppressed by a Chinese platform. But Elon Musk, in his takeover of Twitter, promised many things, some of which he has already delivered. And I'm hoping he'll deliver the rest before too much longer. But he opined today that the situation under the previous regime that ruled Twitter was much worse than we know, and that the more he looks into it, and I'm quoting him, the more horrifying it becomes. Twitter was an organized conspiracy against the public interest before Elon Musk took it over. There was whole-scale, highly organized, intelligence agency directed suppression of people with inconvenient views. There was a hegemony of liberal progressive views, which nowadays means pro-NATO, pro-EU, pro-LGBTQI narratives and agendas, pro-trans agendas, pro-greenery and quackery, and all the things that you can associate with the man buns and man bags that used to hang out in San Francisco at very great expense to the company. He's gone through it like a dose of salts. At one point last week, he was running Twitter with 55 employees, which makes you wonder what the other 6,900 were doing, beyond filling their pockets and their tummies with quinoa and ever so achingly green milkshakes, but not really milk substitutes. You know what I mean? What would you call it? An almond shake, maybe? They were the most pampered workforce on the entire planet. But they did what they were supposed to do, which was to suppress and distort many, many people. Those that they could not successfully deal with by suppression and distortion, say, like me, just by capping my numbers ruthlessly, by squeezing the circulation of my output by as much as 90%. I'm not making that number up. My lawyers have already calculated it. But those that they could not twist or blunt, they simply banned, including the then President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. In a pre-election period, the most powerful and important elected person on the earth was kicked out of the public square by the man buns and man bags in San Francisco. And He's not tweeting now that he's been reinstated. Fair enough, that's entirely his business. I am not a Donald Trump supporter, about which more later, but I'm glad that he was reinstated for the reason Elon Musk has explained, that it was an unjust exclusion and it reduced the credibility of Twitter amongst at least half, maybe more than half, of the United States electorate, the most important electorate on the globe, on the basis that they choose the leadership of the most powerful and richest country on the earth. So big stakes when you ban the sitting president of the United States of America. Having said which, I'm not as ruthlessly capped in numbers as I was, but still ruthlessly capped. My reach is still being ruthlessly squeezed, just not quite as much as before. But the fake label atop every single one of my tweets, even a tweet about my 2-year-old eating ice cream, is still there, falsely claiming that I am a part of Russian state-affiliated media. It's untrue. Elon Musk knows that it's untrue. Twitter has known that it was untrue through my legal action, which has already proved that it is untrue, but it is still there. So if you're watching Mr. Musk, I'm still part of your unfinished business. And until you remove that label and give me the Tesla that I have claimed in damages, and if you don't hurry up, my wife will need one too, then my action against Twitter will continue. I want to stay talking about media just for a minute. That 1.2 million clip that went viral on TikTok was about the festival of Orientalism taking place in the international media over the World Cup in Qatar. Quick parenthesis again, because a lot of people don't hear that which they don't want to hear. I'm banned from Qatar over Syria. I have not been on Al Jazeera television for a decade, although before that I used to be on it every other day, and I'm not exaggerating. If I turned up in Qatar, would not be permitted access to the country. Unlike all these enemies of Qatar that are living it up high on the hog in the 7-star hotels in Doha, whilst spending every waking hour seeking to find something with which to attack their host, Qatar, whilst picking up their checks from the media organizations that have sent them. So I'm not here shilling for Qatar. But if you are going to claim that the biggest abuser of human rights on the planet is Qatar, I'm going to call you a liar. If you're going to claim that next year in the next World Cup in 4 years' time in the United States and Canada will somehow be a cleaner World Cup than it is in Qatar, I'm going to call you a liar. I'm going to call you a hypocrite, or at best I'm going to call you so pig ignorantly stupid that you shouldn't actually be on television in the first place. The United States has invaded and occupied 50 countries since the end of the Second World War. With just 3% of the world's population, it has 25% of the world's prison population, and most of those are black. It has black prisoners in chain gangs working for the prison industrial complex. Every other day there's a mass shootout of innocent people, shoppers, kids in schools, people dancing in nightclubs are mass murdered in the United States because mental illness is so widespread and access to automatic weapons so widespread that you've forgotten about the last atrocity because it has been superseded by the next atrocity. The United States has a torture camp illegally situated in somebody else's country, in Guantanamo Bay, in Cuba. It performed acts of torture. Obama, we tortured some folks in Bagram Air Base, in Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq, in the living experience of every single twisted hack now currently unable to deliver any broadcast without reference to Qatar's human rights record, and some of them openly looking forward to the next World Cup in the United States of America, at which they won't have to talk, they say openly, about human rights any longer. And of course that's true, but not for the reasons that they seek to imply. And the festival goes on. Jürgen Klinsmann, who I must say is Britain's favourite German. He was full of joie de vivre as a player. He played brilliantly for Tottenham Hotspur. He lit up stadia all over this country. He's cheerful and blonde and Germanic, until you hear what it is that he's actually got to say. And what he had to say this week about Iran and Carlos Queiroz, full disclosure, former deputy manager of my own team, Manchester United, twice deputy manager of Manchester United, was such Orientalist slander, he ought to be banned from ever appearing on television again, and FIFA ought to kick him out from any positions that he holds in FIFA. He said that cheating and feigning injury was part of the Iranian culture. He said that lying was part of the Iranian culture. He said that no wonder Queiroz is their manager, thus effectively libeling Carlos Queiroz also. He compounded that slander umpteen times after he issued it on the BBC of all places. And yet he's still grinning on the BBC this evening as I speak. His Orientalist slander of Arabs and of Persians is in microcosm exactly what I've been talking about these last weeks and months. They cannot bear that Qatar is so rich and that it can afford to buy the World Cup and stage the World Cup and set its own rules about alcohol, for example, though having seen today a video of England and Wales fans punching each other senseless, drunkenly, in the streets of Tenerife, of all places, in advance of the showdown between England and Wales in the World Cup this coming week, I can well understand why Qatar banned alcohol to be freely available, at least, on the streets of their country in this World Cup. But they cannot bear it that Qatar can own Harrods, can own the Shard. London Transport banned Qatar's advertising of the World Cup because of its attitude to LGBTQ plus issues. And so Qatar has announced, and I hope they go through with it, that they will urgently review their investments in London. Why should Qatar pump billions of pounds into the London economy when they're so persona non grata they can't even pay through the nose to get their adverts for the World Cup that everybody in London is watching on the underground trains and in the subway stations? You see where I'm going here? This is racism. It is hatred of Arabs. It is hatred of their religion, Islam. It is jealousy. It is envy. It is everything ugly that goes against anything that remains of the ethos of football. My own children are asking me, why is everyone on television criticizing Qatar? Now, they're very young. I don't want to give them the lecture I'm giving you, but I don't know the short answer. They're tuning in to watch football, and every single time they have to listen to these Orientalist lectures about Qatar and by extension. Well done Morocco today, by the way, beating the old colonials 2-0. Belgium, the worst colonialists of them all. Not in terms of quantity, but in terms of, how shall I put it, numbers of people mass murdered by deliberate policy and design on the continent of Africa. So I think I could say Morocco struck a blow in memory of Patrice Lumumba today. At least that's how it felt to me. But here's the rub. I told you I'm banned from Qatar. I'm banned from Qatar because having once been a hero in Qatar, having once been a virtually daily communicant on Al Jazeera television, having been metaphorically carried on their shoulders for my role in opposing the Anglo-American invasion of Iraq, I refused to support the Anglo-American invasion of Syria. I stood by the Syrian Arab Republic. I opposed the alphabet soup of Islamist fanatic extremism, throat-cutting, mass-murdering extremism that Qatar was supporting and paying for billions of dollars for. Never mind the shard. You should see what they put into the people that were supplying the weapons and the wherewithal to ISIS and Al Qaeda and their cousins in the jihadist army in Syria. That's why I'm banned from Qatar. And that was bad enough. I'm prepared to let bygones be bygones on that because, after all, hey, Hamas have done so. After having joined the jihadist effort to topple the government in Damascus, Hamas have moved back to Damascus and are presumably again eating from the plate that they once kicked over on their way out, on their way to Doha in Qatar. But they're back in Damascus now. Sing hallelujah. I like to see the Arabs getting together. I like to see the Muslims getting together, which brings me to my last point. I never watch Al Jazeera now that I'm never on it, but I have been watching it for reasons of World Cup duties over the last few days. It is an hourly broadcast against Iran, its next door neighbor, using exactly the same tropes against Iran that are used against Qatar by exactly the same people. And I've got to say to you, Mr. Al Jazeera, Sheikh Qatar, the people who are targeting you are the same people that are targeting Iran. Are you so blind that you cannot see that? And the same people targeting you and targeting Iran were the people who targeted Syria. And the same people who are targeting Syria targeted Libya, targeted Iraq, targeted Afghanistan. Yet you are serving them by your endless propaganda seeking to foment regime change in Iran. Lastly, as our poll makes clear, the mother of all showdowns takes place on Tuesday. It's a football match, but it's not just a football match. It is the United States of America against the Islamic Republic of Iran. That's if the USA is not kicked out of the World Cup for having broken a fundamental tenet this day of the World Cup's regulations, which forbids and precludes any squad from defacing the flag of any other participating country in the tournament. But the American World Cup team have just defaced the Iranian flag on social media. They changed it. They altered it. They took out its centerpiece and put in their own LGBTQA plus, is there an A in it? LGBTQ plus agenda on the Iranian national flag in the official Twitter account of the United States of America. Now, of course, I know that they will not be kicked out, and therefore the mother of all battles takes place on Tuesday. I like the American football team, just as I like the American people. It's the state and its agencies I hate. But I really like the American football team. In other circumstances, I would have liked them, say, to defeat England earlier this week, but they got a very creditable draw. But the winner takes all on Tuesday. The loser goes home. And so, I'm asking, which team are you? Team Iran or Team USA? It's with the heaviest of hearts, my dear American friends, that I've got to be with Team Iran. It's the mother of all talk shows, and we've got some great guests for you coming up. Stay tuned.